The courageous intervention on the river transformed into a life-altering adventure when Sarah and Mike spotted something unusual in the swirling Blackstone River. Their astonishing find led them face to face with their mortality. The echoing rumble of the river flooded Sarah's ears as she hugged the steep bank, her pulse pounding in her chest. Next to her, Mike was panting heavily, his normal confidence replaced by serious resolve. They had narrowly evaded the raging current that nearly slammed their kayaks into a large rock, but the recognition of their near calamity haunted them. Casting her eyes over the tumultuous waters, Sarah spotted an odd bag swirling amid the debris and eddying currents. Initially dismissing it as just another piece of rubbish swept away by the flow, she was suddenly drawn to a soft noise, barely perceptible amidst the river's roaring. It was a plaintive whimper, distinctly identifiable. Sarah glanced at Mike, her eyes wide. His glance met hers, mirroring her expression. He had also heard it despite the overpowering noise of the angry waters. Their eyes searched for the sound's origin. As they alternated their gaze between each other and the river, a bone-chilling conclusion hit them. As the bag was carried further downstream by the merciless current, the whimpering sound became harder to hear. It became clear. The noise was coming from the bag. "Mike!" Sarah's voice trembled with anxiety. "There's a living creature in that bag." Mike, however, was doubtful and needed to verify for himself. In the blink of an eye, he sprang into action. He bolted out of his kayak and sprinted down the riverbank, matching pace with the quickly moving bag. As he ran, he strained to hear over the din of the water. The chaotic thoughts in his head tried to comprehend what he'd heard. "This can't be happening," he murmured, his breathing irregular. The pitiful whimpers made it impossible to doubt any longer. Time seemed to stand still as Mike ran. What could it possibly be? A puppy? A kitten? Or maybe something wild, like a fox or raccoon? Several scenarios rushed through his mind, each more traumatic than the last. For a fleeting second, he considered plunging into the roaring river, compelled by an unstoppable urge to rescue the defenseless being trapped in that sack. But he quickly realized it would be a death mission. The current that nearly swiped their kayak would claim him in an instant. As he sprinted, a grim question surfaced. Who could do such a thing? What kind of person would be heartless enough to cast a living being into a flood-swollen river? This thought fueled his desperate race. Just when it seemed the sack would forever be lost to the relentless waters, fortune intervened. The river's course bent slightly, bringing the sack closer to where Mike was on the bank. His heart skipped a beat. Maybe this was his only opportunity, however thin a thread it hung on. Mike noticed that ahead, the riverbank steeply fell into a section he couldn't traverse. It was now or never. Harnessing every bit of energy in his aching legs, he propelled himself forward. As he reached out, extending his arm as wide as possible, he thought he had it. He could almost feel the coarse texture of the sack under his fingers. But then, as the current picked up speed, the sack slipped away, just a few millimeters out of reach. "No!" Mike yelled. Disappointment and despair thickened his voice. He halted abruptly at the bank, helplessly watching as the sack drifted further downstream, the plaintive whimpers growing fainter. "Sarah!" he yelled out, desperation lacing his tone. "Get the kayak! We must chase it!" In that moment, all of Sarah's initial fears evaporated. She set aside thoughts of danger or the turbulent current. Her only focus was the defenseless being trapped in that sack, struggling to survive in the ruthless river. She resolutely nodded and darted towards their abandoned kayak. As she ran, she mentally reconstructed the events leading up to this perilous situation. Thoughts of their recent dialogue at home, filled with Mike's fervor and her reluctance, flashed through her mind. Earlier that morning, Sarah had been fervently arguing against her husband's idea of kayaking on the Blackstone River. The river was usually peaceful, but heavy rainfall had transformed it into a raging torrent. "Mike, I don't think this is wise," she voiced her concern, recalling the news reports. "The current will be too powerful and will struggle to steer the kayak." Mike's eyes twinkled with excitement. "Oh, Sarah, where's your sense of adventure? This is exactly the sort of challenge we trained for in college." For 30 minutes, he had persuaded her, appealing to her adventurous side. Eventually, Sarah succumbed to Mike's enthusiasm and his promise of a memorable adventure. As a cautious medical student, Sarah often resorted to kayaking as a stress buster, but today's conditions were beyond her comfort zone. The thunderous sound of the river drowned out her inner voice of caution. Mike, a former collegiate kayaker, known for testing his limits, painted a vivid picture of their course down the churning river. This quality had drawn Sarah to him during a kayaking club gathering the previous year. "All right," she finally agreed, her voice shaky with both nervousness and curiosity. "But we stay together, right? And at the first hint of any trouble, we make for the shore." Mike's face burst into a wide grin as he high-fived Sarah. "That's my girl. Believe me, this will be incredible." As they neared the river, their expressions changed drastically. Sarah found it bewildering how Mike could maintain a grin while bracing for kayaking, especially considering the thunderous waves ahead. "Mike, I still think this isn't wise," she cautioned again, eyeing the frothing river. "The current seems too forceful." "Trust me, we'll be all right," Mike reassured her as he helped her into a life jacket. Upon pushing off from the shore, the river's full ferocity hit Sarah. It seized their kayak as though it were a living entity, dragging them downstream with alarming speed. Floating debris whizzed past, threatening to capsize the kayak. "Mike!" she shouted over the thundering rapids. "This has gone too far! We need to escape now!" They struggled against the flow, using every muscle to paddle toward the safety of the riverbank. The river appeared set on keeping them in its clutches. Now, as Sarah propelled her kayak back into the dangerous water, her heart raced as she directed it toward Mike, who was battling the turbulent river. He sunk to waist height and made contact with the kayak, clutching its side to balance it further, then hopped aboard in one smooth motion. As soon as Mike secured himself in the kayak, the mighty current scooped them up. The river pushed them onward with daunting speed, transforming their rescue mission into an anxiety-ridden race against time. Their paddles cut through the water, not for acceleration, but for navigation through the perilous route ahead. Positioned at the front of the kayak, Sarah hollered instructions. "Veer to the right. No, now to the left." Her voice battled against the rumbling of the river. Mike responded immediately, tension tightening in his muscles as he maneuvered their kayak through a maze of rocks. Despite the imminent threat, questions flooded Mike's mind. During a lull in the chaos, he addressed Sarah, confident her knowledge in animal biology might reveal crucial insights. "Sarah," he shouted, "even if the bag stays afloat, could what's inside still be in danger?" Eyes fixed on the next obstacle, Sarah considered his question seriously. "Absolutely. Water could seep in, creating a hypothermia risk, and collision with rocks could harm it." "How long do you think this could last?" pressed Mike. Sarah shook her head, her expression serious. "Difficult to guess. Perhaps minutes, at most an hour, depending on the air left in the bag and how cold the water is." Their resolve strengthened by this information, they focused on handling the kayak, using the current to their advantage. The bag was now visible, bobbing on the fast-flowing water ahead. It danced around the rocks, disappearing behind the waves but re-emerging moments later. As they approached, a new issue arose. The same current propelling them onward now threatened to sweep them past their goal. At the bow of the kayak, Sarah readied herself to snatch it. "Brace yourself," Mike alerted from the stern. Sarah nodded, extending her trembling hand closer to the bag. Her fingers grazed the coarse, damp tie on its top. A glimmer of hope sparked within her, but it faltered when the bag collided with a semi-submerged stone, pushing it out of reach. "No!" she exclaimed, vexation rising. She hung further down, her hand outstretched to its maximum. This time her fingers managed to grip the fabric, but as she attempted to pull it closer, the kayak swayed dangerously. Water surged over the edge, and it felt like they were about to capsize. Mike quickly shifted his weight, bringing the kayak back into balance. As the kayak steadied, Sarah rocked back and breathed deeply. The bag slipped away again, continuing to drift forward. Desolation washed over her. The venture seemed too risky, and the odds were not in their favor. However, when Mike glanced at Sarah, he saw something that ignited determination within him. Despite the terror reflected in her wide eyes and trembling mouth, she had already poised herself for another attempt. In that instant, her indomitable spirit sparked a renewed zest in Mike. "We can do this," he declared resolutely. Sarah nodded in silent agreement. As they continued their pursuit, plans flitted through Mike's mind. Suddenly, a plan struck him. "Sarah," he called, "let's try to close in on the bag instead of trailing it head-on. We can work with the current to reach it. Over there." After a brief pause, Sarah nodded enthusiastically. "It's worth a try." They adjusted their course, aiming to sail parallel to the bag's direction. But the unpredictable river had its own tactics. Whenever they managed to lessen the gap, an unexpected undercurrent or emerging stone forced them to change direction, keeping the bag just out of reach. Frustration mounted in Mike with each unsuccessful attempt. Clenching his jaw tight and resisting the urge to surrender, he noticed Sarah was acutely aware of his escalating dismay. She busied her thoughts, searching for a solution. As they neared the bag again, a spontaneous idea hit Sarah. "Mike!" she exclaimed, overriding her exhaustion with exhilaration. "I have a plan." Without waiting for a response, Sarah cautiously extended the paddle toward the kayak, trying to steer it toward the bag. Overbalancing could risk everything, so Sarah focused all her strength on maintaining stability. Understanding Sarah's strategy, Mike began to guide the paddle thoughtfully. With a subtle maneuver, he kept the kayak steady as they approached the sack, inching closer. Sarah's fingertips trembled as she sought to maintain her grip. The sack was now so near that individual burlap threads were visible. She lunged forward with a final effort, her fingers wrapping around the rope knot at its opening. "I did it!" she gasped, a mix of triumph and relief flooding her voice. Mike echoed her victory with a shout, quickly helping Sarah secure the unusual find. They hoisted the damp sack into the kayak, feeling movement within. Against all odds, whatever was inside was still alive. Exhausted yet ecstatic, Sarah and Mike locked eyes, a shared sense of achievement flowing between them. They had done the unimaginable but knew they had ventured far from their comfort zone. After regaining their composure, Sarah surveyed their surroundings, trying to make sense of the situation. "We've come a long way," she sighed, still catching her breath. They had drifted nearly 2 miles downstream from where they began. Now on the outskirts of Riverdale, a tiny town the river passed through, she pointed out. "Look, there are people there. They might be able to help." Mike agreed, looking in the direction of other kayakers preparing to set off, visibly excited by the challenging currents. "First, let's see what we gambled our safety for," he suggested, curiosity tinged with worry. Sarah's hands quivered as she cautiously untied the knot, unfolding the sack. To their astonishment, 6 little damp bundles of fur tumbled onto the grassy riverbank. Newborn puppies, eyes still tightly shut, squirmed and whined faintly in the open air. Their fur was clumped and cold, and their minuscule bodies trembled uncontrollably. Despite their fatigue from the river escapade, Sarah and Mike discovered fresh reserves of energy. They carefully wrapped the puppies in Mike's jacket and hurried toward the other kayakers. Sarah reached out urgently. "Excuse me, we need help. We found these puppies in the river. They require immediate medical care." The kayakers, a duo named Tom and Lisa, quickly responded. Lisa gasped in surprise. "My goodness, what can we do? Do you have a vehicle nearby?" Mike inquired. "We must reach a vet clinic urgently." Tom agreed enthusiastically. "Our SUV is close by. We can drive you wherever you need." As they hurried toward Tom and Lisa's vehicle, Sarah clutched the makeshift bundle of puppies. Mike briefly recounted their river escape. Tom navigated quickly and securely, while Lisa searched for the closest animal hospital on her phone. "It's about a 15-minute drive," she informed. "I'll contact them now to say we're on our way." The personnel at the Riverdale Animal Hospital jumped into action as soon as Tom's SUV arrived. "Bring them in quickly," instructed Dr. Elena Martinos, the head vet, guiding them toward an examination room. Sarah and Mike tenderly placed the bundle onto the examination table, revealing 6 small puppies. Lisa audibly gasped at the sight, her eyes welling with tears. Dr. Martinos and her team moved quickly, assessing vital signs and initiating emergency protocols. "They're showing signs of hypothermia and dehydration," reported Dr. Martinos in a concise professional tone. "We need to warm them up gradually and give them fluids." After several hours with the newlyweds, Tom and Lisa, Dr. Martinos finally emerged from the procedure room with encouraging news. Sarah nestled into Mike, feeling the weight of the day's events. Lisa stepped up and gently touched Sarah's shoulder. "You're both heroes," she said quietly. "Without you, these little creatures wouldn't have survived." Mike shrugged it off modestly. "We just did what anyone else would have done." As the excitement of the earlier rescue wore off, Sarah and Mike remembered their car was still parked 2 miles upstream. "Oh dear, our car! How will we get back?" Sarah exclaimed. Lisa promptly replied, "No need to worry. Tom and I can give you a ride back to your car. It's the least we can do after today's events." The pairs bonded over a shared love of kayaking during the drive back to the original site. As they approached, their car came into view, a sight for sore eyes after the day's drama. Tom pulled up beside it, and Sarah and Mike disembarked, feeling a mix of fatigue and relief. "Thank you both so much," Sarah said, embracing Lisa and extending a hand toward Tom. "We couldn't have rescued those puppies without your help." "We're just glad we could assist," Tom replied. "Keep us posted about the puppies' progress. If there's anything you need, don't hesitate to reach out." Their journey home was filled with contemplation over the burgeoning futures of the 6 tiny lives they had saved from the river. By the time the sun reached its peak the following day, Sarah and Mike found themselves back at the vet. The palpable cheerfulness in Dr. Martinos' demeanor signaled good news even before she spoke. Approaching them, she said, "All 6 puppies will be all right. They were a bit cold and dehydrated, but they were little warriors. We reckon they're about a week old." A wave of relief and pride washed over Sarah and Mike as they hugged each other. Concurrently, the clinic's receptionist, intrigued by the couple's rescue story, encouraged them to share their experiences with the puppies. Captivated by the heartwarming narrative, she suggested making a video to share online, inadvertently launching the couple to immediate renown. In the following days, the tale of the river's rescue puppies swept through the local community, touching many hearts. Adoption requests poured in from every corner, including a modest animal control depot in Axbury. Sarah and Mike made time in their days to visit the pups, delighting in their growing strength and cheerful spirits. Each day was marked by new feats, seeing, walking, and even playfully yelping and barking. After much reflection, Sarah and Mike concluded their home wasn't the best environment for their canine pals to thrive. They wanted a nurturing environment that could secure the puppies' futures. Consequently, they sought assistance from Axbury's Animal Control, which gladly agreed to foster the puppies once they were strong enough. As Sarah lightly scratched the smallest puppy, whom they had begun to lovingly call River, she marveled at the serendipitous chain of events that had led them here. What started as a casual kayaking trip transformed into a life-altering expedition. It served as a reminder to her and all involved of the ripple effects a single act of fearlessness can set off. The tale of the puppies didn't end here. As they grew healthier each day, a promising future filled with caring families seemed imminent. The memory of that singular day at the river would continue to serve Sarah and Mike as a symbolic reminder of the changes that ordinary individuals can instigate when they choose to act with empathy and courage. What an incredible adventure. What would your actions be if such a difficult circumstance presented itself? Share your opinions in the comments below.